Hey Panthers, I'm going to help you with your homework for the Circe reading. I posted the questions on Classroom that I'd like you to answer. So in your notebook, I want you to do two things. One, set up your during reading question. This is the only thing you need to do while you're watching this video. So part A during reading is to list the words used to describe Circe. So set up a little T-chart word and then this makes her sound, and give yourself space for like 10 words. And then you'll go back afterwards and you'll explain what this makes her sound like to you. Like, what opinion does this give you of Circe by the translator using that language. Then, after your reading, or after you watch the video, you'll come back and you don't need to copy down these questions, but you need to answer all three of them. One, when does power shift between Circe and Odysseus? And you can say it shifts a couple times. Two, who had more power? So you could say that this person started out with this power and this person shifted to this power and they had more, like you just described who you think has more power when. And then lastly, how does Circe compare to other women in power? So you could compare her to fictional characters that you can think of. You could compare her to real life people. You could compare her to real life famous people. It's up to you. But just how does the way that we talk about Circe and the power she have compare to the way that we talk about real life women or fictional characters? Okay? So set your notebook up, pause this, and then turn it back on. All right. You're back from being paused. We're going to start with the textbook version because it goes through and you get the plot the quickest, and then we'll look at two other versions to see a little more detail on the wording that they use in the different translations. This is book 10, Circe, the Grace of the Witch. In your textbook, if you need to look back at this, it's page 386 and 387. Circe, the Grace of the Witch. And I'm going to start with the summary that gives you a little bit before they reach her island. That's okay. So this is right after leaving the land of the Cyclops. Odysseus and his men next land on the island of Aeolus, the Wind King, and stay with him a month. To extend his hospitality, Aeolus gives Odysseus two parting gifts: a fair west wind that will blow the fleet of ships toward Ithaca, and a great bag holding all the unfavorable stormy winds. Within sight of home, and while Odysseus is sleeping, the men open the bag, thinking it contains gold and silver. The bad winds thus escape and blow the ships back to Aeolus's island. The king refuses to help them again, believing now that their voyage has been cursed by the gods. Which it has, right? Poseidon is against them. The discouraged mariners next stop briefly in the land of the Laestrygons, fierce cannibals who bombard the fleet of ships with boulders. Only Odysseus, his ship, and its crew of 45 survive the shower of boulders. The lone ship then sails to Aea, home of the goddess Circe, who is considered by many to be a witch. So there are our first two words used to describe her. So you should write down on that chart, goddess and witch. There, Odysseus divides his men into two groups. Eurylochus leads one platoon to explore the island, while Odysseus stays behind on the ship with the remaining crew. In the wood they found an open glade, around a smooth stone house, the hall of Circe, and wolves and mountain lions lay there, mild in her soft spell, fed on her drug of evil. Soft spell and drug of evil are terms that aren't used to describe her, but they are things that she has done. Has she done a soft spell or has she done a drug of evil? How can it be both? So you might want to put those words down also. None would attack. Oh, it was strange, I tell you. But switching their long tails, they faced our men like hounds, who look up when their master comes with tidbits for them, as he will, from the table. Humbly those wolves and lions with mighty paws fawned on our men, who met their yellow eyes and feared them. So that's a pretty, fearful entrance to Circe's hall, right? You see these giant mountain lions and wolves, but they're acting like trained dogs. In the entranceway, they stayed to listen there. Inside her quiet house, they heard the goddess Circe. Low she sang in her beguiling voice, while on her loom she wove ambrosial fabric, sheer and bright, by that craft known to the goddess of heaven. There's another term for her. She has a beguiling voice. If something's beguiling, it's almost like it it draws you in a way that is almost tricking you. No one would speak until Polites, most faithful and likable of my officers, said, "Dear friends, no need for stealth. Here's a young weaver singing a pretty song to set the air a-tingle on these lawns and paven courts. Goddess she is, or lady. Shall we greet her? Is she a goddess, or is she a lady? Are they different?" But he says that those are not things to fear, right? If she's a goddess or she's a lady, neither one is scary. So reassured, they all cried out together, and she came swiftly to the shining doors to call them in. All but Eurylochus, who feared a snare. The innocents went after her. On thrones she seated them, and lounging chairs, while she prepared a meal of cheese and barley and amber honey mixed with Pramnian wine, adding her own vile pinch, to make them lose desire or thought of our dear fatherland. Scarce had they drunk when she flew after them with her long stick and shut them in a pigsty, bodies, voices, heads, and bristles, all swinish now, though minds were still unchanged. To be swinish means she's turned them into pigs. They are literally swine, but their minds are still the minds of men, so they know that they have been turned into pigs. And that description certainly makes her sound witchish, right? So squealing in they went, and Circe tossed them acorns, mast, and cornel berries, fodder for hogs who rut and slumber on the earth. Down to the ship Eurylochus came running to cry alarm. Foul magic doomed his men. But working with dry lips to speak a word, he could not, being so shaken. Blinding tears welled in his eyes, foreboding filled his heart. When we were frantic questioning him, at last we heard the tale. Our friends were gone. And then the entire rest of the book is summarized in this version, and we'll look at some of those key parts a little more closely in just a second. But let's start with the summary. Eurylochus tells Odysseus what has happened and begs him to sail away from Circe's island. Against this advice, however, Odysseus rushes to save his men from the enchantress. On the way, he meets the god Hermes, who gives him a magical plant called moly to protect him from Circe's power. Still, Hermes warns Odysseus that he must make the goddess swear she will play no witch's tricks. Armed with the moly and Hermes' warning, Odysseus arrives at Circe's palace. Notice, a god has given him something called moly, and we call things from gods holy, right? He gave him holy moly. Circe gives Odysseus a magic drink, but it does not affect him, and he threatens to kill her with his sword. Circe turns the pigs back into men, but puts them all into a trance. They stay for 1 year until Odysseus finally begs her to let them go home. She replies that they must first visit the land of the dead and hear prophecy from the ghost of Tiresias. So there's a little bit more to it than this 2-paragraph summary, and I want to look at some of those key parts in the other versions. And the first version we're going to look at is not here. Let me pause this. All right, I'm back. I found it. So some of the ways that Circe is described in this other version. So this is the Rouse version that we've looked at a couple times before. When they first encounter her, she's a beautiful goddess within, singing in a lovely voice. Again, she's a beautiful goddess when Hermes is warning Odysseus about her. And then when Odysseus goes in to meet her, she dropped in her drugs with her heart full of wicked hopes. I kind of like that description, that she is trying to do something with wicked hope. And then when the magic doesn't work on him, she lets out a loud shriek and ran up and embraced my knees and blurted out in dismay. Who are you? Where do you come from in the wide world? Where is your city? Who are your parents? I'm amazed that you have swallowed my drugs and you are not bewitched. Indeed, there never was another man who could stand these drugs once he had let them pass his teeth. But you must have a mind that cannot be bewitched. Surely you are Odysseus, the man who is never at a loss. And then she tells him, come now, put up your sword in the sheath, let us lie down on my bed and trust each other in love. She is like, my magic doesn't work on you, let's go to bed and find if we can become friends, right? And he answered her, ah, Circe, how could you bid me be gentle to you, when you have turned my companions into pigs in this house. And now that you have me here with deceitfulness in your heart, you bid me to go to your bed in your chamber, that when I am stripped you may unman me and make me a weakling. I will not enter your bed unless you can bring yourself to swear a solemn oath that you will never attempt any evil thing against me. She swore the oath at once, and when she had sworn the oath fully and fairly, I entered the bed of Circe. And then they decide to stay there. They have a lovely feast. All his men are turned back into men, and get all pretty. They had put oil on them. And then look at how he talks about her here. And the radiant goddess came up to me and said, "No more lamentations now, Odysseus. Don't be sad anymore. I know myself how many hardships you have suffered in the seas, and how many cruel enemies have attacked you on land. Now then, eat your food and drink your wine until you become as gay as when you first left your rugged home in Ithaca. Just now you are withered and downhearted. You can't forget your dismal wanderings. Your feelings are not in tune with good cheer, for assuredly you have suffered much." We took her advice, and there we remained for a whole year, with plenty to eat and good wine to drink. But when the year was past and the seasons came round again, my companions called me aside and said, "Good heavens, have you forgotten home altogether? Do remember it, if it is really fated that you shall have a safe return to your great house and your native land." And so when I came to Circe's bed, I entreated her earnestly, and she listened to what I had to say. "Keep the promise you made me, Circe, that you would help me on my homeward way. My mind is set upon it, and my companions too. They were worrying about it and grumbling all around me when you were not by." She answered, "Prince Laertiades, son of Laertes, right? Never baffled Odysseus." There's a new epithet for him, never baffled. "I would not have you remain in my house unwillingly. But there is another journey you must make first. You must go to the house of Hades and awful Persephone, to ask directions from Tiresias the blind Theban seer." So this is where she gives him the advice on going to the land of the underworld, and that's everything we caught up on in class already. So you saw some new ways that he referred to her, a radiant goddess. She had wicked hope in her heart, and you saw how she reacted when her magic didn't work on him. So I want you to think about those things as you answer the questions. There was one other version I did want to look at and just see the ways that they refer to her. In this one, the Lattimore translation, when they first see her, they say, "There lives Circe of the lovely hair, the dread goddess who talks with mortals." And I like that one. It reminds me of the Princess Bride, the dread pirate Roberts. But when we dread something, how do we feel about it? We fear them, and it's like the last thing we want. And it's also notable that she is a goddess who talks with mortals. Then later, she is Circe, skilled in medicines. Maybe she's just a doctor, not a witch, right? When Hermes warns Odysseus about her, he says, "I will tell you all the malevolent guiles of Circe." Malevolent means evil intentions, right? And guiles are tricks. He's worried that she will make him weak and unmanned. And then, lastly, when he has been at her house for a year and is ready to go, he calls her shining among goddesses. She, shining among goddesses, like she stands out as the most special goddess now. And that, I think, is all that I want to look at with Circe. I want you to finish that assignment and be prepared to come back and talk about it in class the next time I see you, Thursday or Friday. All right, have a good day, and let me know if you have any questions.